Hey, everybody. Welcome to Hail Media. My name's Doug Cohen. I'm a co-founder of Hail Media, and I am very excited here to have Mr. Brian Letscher join me in a conversation to discuss a couple of things. We want to talk about a book that Brian is publishing. It's going to be out here any day, hopefully by the time you see this, actually. You can either order the hard copy or you can already pre-order the e-copy. And the name of the book is Hail, Those Who Stayed, and it's about the 1969 Michigan football team, Bo Schembechler getting the job, the transition to the new regime, Bo versus Woody, all of the drama that went into that time and that season and that victory at Michigan Stadium over Ohio State, over Woody's greatest team
Yeah.
in 1969. And so it's a fantastic read, but also, Football Alumni of Michigan is an organization that is really near and dear to our hearts at Hail Media, as well as all of us who played football at Michigan, like Brian and I both did. Brian was there right after me. And Football Alumni of Michigan is a nonprofit. It's a 501c3 helping former players with mental health. And we have a teammate assistance program and Wolverine Hope, which is a mental health hotline. And part of the proceeds of this book, Brian is donating back to FAM, which is amazing.
Yep.
So we want to
100%.
talk.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit, Brian. Let's first talk about the book and how the idea came about to do a book on the 1969 team. Why now? Why you?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, the story had been written. Obviously, people know the story. It had been written a couple other times and written really well. I think there was a day when I was still playing. It was after a summer workout, and we were exhausted, sitting around, right, and laying around after the workout, trying to recover. And Gittleson's talking about this team, as he always did, right? He would tell us stories about past teams, right? He would inundate us in the best way with the lore of Michigan so we understood what we were a part of. And he starts talking about this team. And I remember him saying, that's a story. There should be a movie about that team. And so for that alone, because I was a huge movie and TV fan, I began to read about it. I began to ask about it. My dad was a big Michigan fan, and he was of college age in '69. So began to learn about that team. And then when the 50th anniversary came up in 2019, I had met some of those guys. I was doing a TV show at the time. I was on a show called Scandal, and it was so influential in the history of Michigan football. It was such a turning point. Look, Michigan football was already Michigan football, right? But that team was a turning point, was a change that carries through to today. So everything about that team, and then I talked to Brandstatter and I began to think about writing a TV series, to be honest, a limited series on that team, because look, you've got all the stuff going on in 1969, right? And this book doesn't go into that as much, but for the TV series, that really fascinated me. And then what this team went through, Bo Schembechler's first year, these guys coming away from Bump, who they loved, right? Don Canham's in his first year as the athletic director, the athletic program's in the hole. All this stuff needs to happen. And these guys talk about the way this season changed their lives forever and reverberates for all of us. So it just fascinated me. And the more I read about it, this is where Those Who Stay Will Be Champions came from.
Yeah.
That team.
Yeah.
So I still get emotional when I'm writing it. When I was finishing the book, I'm still getting emotional because those are the things that I carry with me today. And when I talk to these guys, and it's not the victory over Ohio State as much as what they went through and how they came together and what that did for all of us, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I chose it as a story. And then, I just couldn't put it down. I developed that TV show that got put aside for a little while, and I just couldn't put it down. And I thought, well, let me I'm a television writer and a screenwriter as well as an actor. Let me write a historical fiction version of this. What happened in those rooms? What were those conversations between Canham and Bo, between Millie and Bo, between the players? That's what fascinated me as a storyteller. So let me tell this in a different way that I thought would be entertaining and interesting while also, sticking to is, to what happened. And that's an interesting, unique way to tell the story and get it out there to a whole new generation of people.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? To be clear, when I asked the question why now and why you, it was really just to get your perspective. But to your point, you are absolutely the guy to do something like this because you've been in the game of writing and writing TV shows and screenplays and plays for the stage, as far as I understand it, right,
Yeah,
Brian?
at the Purple Rose over there in Chelsea is where a lot of them started.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Yeah.
you've had a career of being a creator and being an actor and a successful one on TV and in that space for a long time. So it absolutely, you were the right guy to do it, as evidenced by how great the book is. I mean, I thought it was absolutely fantastic because, kind of to your point, I love the lore of Michigan football. I'm a Michigan football history geek. I've always loved it. My brother played. He's 10 years older than me, so my brother started playing at Michigan when I was 9. So I was kind of indoctrinated into it,
Yeah.
very being in and around that locker room and going to those bowl games and being growing up around that from when I was a kid. So I've always loved it, and I've known some of those guys from that team, and I'd always heard a lot of things about that time. One of the things that I heard was, playing for Bo on his last 2 teams, people are like, "Oh, you guys had it easy." He it was nothing. Playing for Bo in 1988 and 1989 was nothing like playing for him in 1969. And I'd
Yeah.
always heard those types of things, and those who stayed because so many guys were kind of, dropped off by the wayside when he came to town. So to kind of be a fly on the wall, like in the kitchen at the Schembechler home down in Oxford, talking about, should he take the job? And then, like, being able to hear his first conversation with Don Canham and his first meeting with the team, and just kind of to
Yeah.
be able to have that story, told to me, really gave me kind of a window into that whole thing that gave it life that I'd never quite had a grasp of until I read this thing. And that's why I think people are going to absolutely love this book, because you really get a feel for all of that. And I know you
Right.
had some help from some of the players on that team,
Yeah.
in telling you some of those stories. So who helped you? Who were some of the more, colorful characters in terms of relating some of those stories that you came across in researching this thing?
Yeah. So I interviewed, I think, almost 15 players. I interviewed a few coaches. So the players, first and foremost, it was like Dick Calderazzo has been amazing. Jim Brandstatter's been fantastic. Billy Taylor's been fantastic. I talked to Dierdorf. I talked to Chuck Stobart, one of the coaches. Jim Young was the defensive coordinator. I talked to Lloyd Carr because Lloyd was the defensive coordinator when I was there, and I also know he knew Bo. So I had my questions for Lloyd were more about what was Bo like in a way that I needed to put in the book that, he could answer. What might happen here? How might he respond to something? Because again, this is a fictional story, right? So I wanted to get that stuff right. I talked to Pete Newell. I talked to Moorhead, quarterback Don. I talked to Fritz Seifert. I talked to tons of guys, but really, Caldo's been there. Brandstatter wrote the foreword,
Yeah.
to the book, which was just a dream come true. And because these guys were kind of my heroes, you know what I mean? And the more I talked to them, they became even more. They always say, "Don't meet your heroes," but they didn't let me down. In terms of the stories they told. And God, Brandstatter can tell a story, right?
Yeah.
and and so can Caldo, and so can Taylor, and they were all players on that team, contributors. I talked to Tom Curtis, who was a safety and the all-time interception leader at Michigan still. Um, I talked to Michael Mandich, who was Jim Mandich's son. Obviously, Jim had passed away, but Jim was the MVP of that team, went on to play for the Dolphins,
Yeah.
the captain of that team. I mean, is there anything, more honorary than being the captain of the Michigan football team? So I just had a ton of help, and these guys were there, and I have pages and pages of notes that I have still on paper and are in my computer as well. And it gave me so many great stories. And I read other books. There's books out there,
Yeah.
whether it's Joe Falls wrote a book with Bo, I think in 1973 or something like that. Bo had only been there for 4 or 5 seasons, but it's a great book about Bo. So I read that and would pull stuff from there. Again, it's all coloring the way I'm going to tell this story. Some of these stories aren't necessarily new if you've been around a while, but I think, like you said, the way I'm trying to put you right in that space with them, with their dialogue, with words that we don't have recordings of, but that I made up, but came from these interviews, came from these books. So it was a blast, man. And I think the biggest thing I can get, is that you liked it, right?
Yeah.
That you enjoyed it, that those guys, I got some really great texts from Caldo and Taylor and Brandstatter about their feelings on the book, and that's it. I'm done.
Yeah, yeah,
That's great.
right, exactly. What else do you
Yeah.
need? Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, so a couple of things that you mentioned that reminded me in reading the book, that to have Joe Falls kind of be a character and almost kind of like an early antagonist a bit,
Yeah.
from the press to
Yeah.
Bo, which Bo always had such a colorful relationship with the press over the years, and we knew Joe, like we knew the Falls, and Joe actually wrote an article about my brother Jeff
Oh,
back in the
wow.
day, and so that was kind of fun to hear Joe, taking Bo to task a little bit in the early days. And then the other thing that I thought of, that you just said, they say don't meet your heroes. When some of your heroes are guys who played football at Michigan, well, when you're part of that fraternity, those guys might be your heroes, but they all look at you as brothers. We all are part of that same fraternity. You could meet a guy that played 30, 40, 50 years before you, and it would be like you were teammates, when you
Yeah.
start to talk. So it's not like
Yeah.
you were some outsider that they allowed into their circle to tell these stories. Fam, means so much to all of us, and helping out our brothers and former players who might be struggling, because this thing all means so much to all of us together. So I think the fact that they were also, forthcoming with their help to help you get this story out makes perfect sense. I've always found that to be the case. Anytime I meet any former players, it's always like we're one team.
100%. And I think that is what I was telling you before we started too, is that, you know, I don't love doing this stuff. I don't love doing the promotion stuff, but what did I learn from these guys? What did I learn from being a part of Michigan football? It's not about me. It's about being a
Yeah,
part of something bigger than myself, right? How often did we hear that? You're a part of something bigger than yourself. And there's great relief in that, because what Lloyd always says, the strength of the wolf is the pack and the strength of the pack is the wolf, right? We're
totally.
all together. So you're right. You do feel like one big team. And FAM has been, from its inception, but certainly since Andy's taken it over and you guys have really pushed this thing in a great direction and are growing it, and the mental health initiatives, I mean, it was a no-brainer for me to go, of course I would give back to that. That I'm not even giving back to it. I'm giving back to the thing that gave me the opportunity to write this book. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It would
yeah.
it would be the book doesn't exist without that team. It doesn't exist without Michigan football. So that's a no-brainer, right?
Right, you're
Um
you're evangelizing it more than you're just giving back to it.
yeah, yeah, and how could we not, right? It's why FAM exists.
Yeah,
To give back to the program that gave so much and to help the players, staff, coaches who might need help now, right?
yeah,
Um, when I went to that tailgate when I was back for the Wisconsin game, it's just the best. You walk into a room and I knew a bunch of guys, but there was a bunch of people I didn't know. But your family right away.
yeah,
You got a
yeah,
ring on. You got you played at some point, and you understand. Maybe we didn't go through what the '69 team went through. I don't think any team went through that again. But we do understand what it's like to go through a season at Michigan or a career at Michigan and to be a part of that, to sit in those meetings, to beat Ohio State,
yeah.
it's a great, yeah, it's a glorious brotherhood for sure. And this book definitely, like you said, evangelizes that. And, It's not all roses. You can't have drama without without some conflict, right? But at the end of the day, we're lucky.
Yeah. Well, and I want to talk a little bit about that too. Like, how close do you think? Like, this was a part that I guess I didn't really realize. That there was talk about potentially shuttering the program. Like, how?
Yeah, it it was that's a part of the book that definitely was probably the biggest part of my imagination.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that it didn't exist at that time. It
Yeah.
did.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not necessarily at Michigan, it was a shadow. I can't even remember where I read it or heard it. It was like a whisper, right? But at other programs around the country, it was a lot more than that.
Yeah.
There was movements from the faculty, right? Because this was anti-war. It was civil. It was a lot of, there was a lot of change in the idea of a football program. Certainly in other parts of the country, it was real. I have newspaper articles from several universities where they are fighting to hold on, Division I universities, where they are fighting to hold on to their football program. So I wanted um, something else for them to fight against, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that provided that, but a lot of that was from my brain.
Well, I mean,
Yeah,
listen, it worked, and I'll say this: if there was even a whisper of it in Ann Arbor, the fact that there could even be a whisper at a place like Michigan kind of gives context to the transition that the place went through from where it was to Bo showing up, because
100%.
things were
Yeah,
not going that great. The stadium was not filled every week. So I think that definitely kind of hammered that home a little bit.
yeah, yeah. I think for sure. I mean, you know the uh the football program was not paying for itself, let
Right.
alone a lot of the rest of the athletic department, which is the way things kind of need to work at most Division I programs, right? So it was dire straits for sure. I also talked to Don Eaton, who was Don Canham's son-in-law. And he talked about that time, what he heard from Canham. It's hard to imagine now, right? It's
Right.
it's almost impossible to imagine that the stadium was half full and that the football program and the athletic department was in debt.
Yeah.
You know, that is unfathomable to us now. But
Right.
all the marketing, all the merchandising, all the Block M, all the stuff we know now, that was Canham.
That was Canham. Yep. Yep.
Didn't exist then, right? Those who stay will be champions did not exist.
Right.
So
Right.
that's why that season was such the turning point of that team. Because if that doesn't happen, who knows where it goes?
Yeah.
Who knows where that goes? Because then all of a sudden, maybe they're not buying into Bo. Can you imagine that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that happens all the time. You don't get it turned in the first season or two, and then you've lost them because it doesn't happen. He made this promise: those who stay will be champions. Now, if you don't follow through on that promise, who knows where this place goes, right?
Right.
But
Well,
those guys, that team, and Bo and Canham followed through on it, and it changed everything.
yeah. Well, and to have a couple of guys on the team in that building, although it really wasn't a building, it was Yost.
Right,
Really, at the time.
right.
I mean, they didn't really have facilities, but they had a couple of guys on that team that bought in
Yep.
and became leaders on that team, like you mentioned, Mandich, and one that really stuck out to me in the story was Garvey Craw. And
Yeah.
I've heard about Garvey Craw, but I didn't really know much about him until I read this. And what a bad dude. I mean, that's a guy that really bought in and really helped make sure that everybody else was pulling their weight and doing what they needed to do. Uh,
Yeah.
you need guys like that, and he's kind of, for me, was kind of the unsung hero of this story in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah. Lots of guys talked about Garvey. Calderazzo and Garvey were really close, and he told me lots of stories about Garvey. Not only how physically tough he was, how mentally tough he was, and what a leader he was. And really, I mean, from being there, like what was always emphasized: leadership, seniors, seniors. This is your team, right? And so those seniors on that team who had gotten their butt kicked in 68 down in Columbus was the genesis of all of this. That's where all of it started. Those seniors wanted to make up for that. And Craw was certainly one of those guys, as was Mandich and Caldo and Cecil Pryor and, all these guys who were,
Wow.
Henry Hill was a junior, but Henry was a big player. That Tom Curtis, Barry Pearson, all these guys, seniors.
Yeah.
So really big.
I think subsequently we've always said that it helps you when you've got seniors in the building who have won championships because they
Yeah.
know what it takes to win them. So when you
Yeah.
go for a little bit of a stretch without winning one, for seniors to take kind of that leadership role and help lead the team to a championship, it's just an extra hurdle to figure out how to do that when you haven't had upperclassmen to teach you how to do it since you've been there. I think that's a big point in terms of how monumental of an achievement it was for them to do what they did, especially against that Ohio State team, who was
Especially
really
against that team, which was the best team in the history of college football, they said. And, not to give away too much, but
right.
they also had a villain in Bo. Those guys all they had to band together against and then eventually with Bo, but it was contentious. Half the team quit. So not only are you trying to figure out how to win a championship together, but let alone you've got this new coach who is taking your whole program and just flipped it upside down and shook it. And, so you don't know which way's up and you got to find your way through that. That's the journey of the book, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Especially for a guy like Bobby Baumgartner, who I won't.
oh, poor Bobby Baumgartner, man. I mean, I say poor Bob, you don't pity him because the guy came through it and he did it. But, yeah, there was, he had a journey with the old mile test that we all went through,
We all went through it. Yeah. Yeah.
Although it
For
was
us,
a mile and a half when I was playing. Was it a mile and a
it
half
was,
when you were playing?
I was going to say, it was a mile and a half for us too. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which was a horrible distance to have to run for time.
Terrible.
Horrible.
Yeah.
But yeah, all great stuff. I mean, I think people are really going to love this book, and
Thanks,
we're
buddy.
gonna do whatever we can to make sure everybody knows about it. The
Yeah.
other topic I want to talk a little bit about Bump Elliott as a character in the book, and I always kind of heard that Bump was a gentleman, a classy guy, and I've always felt like this kind of affinity towards Bump and his era, and then they had some success while Bump was there. They went to a Rose Bowl and won it.
Yeah.
Against Oregon State. And
Yep.
Bump was an All-American at Michigan. Bump and his brother Pete. Bump was a Michigan man through and through. And I loved to hear about Bump and how he handled the whole situation with class and dignity, and what a great man Bump was.
Yeah, I feel the same way. He was someone I came to know better as I was reading and researching the book. I think one of his grandsons or grandnephew, Elliot, was on my team.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that name, is through and through with Michigan, as you said, with Pete. But, one story that stood out and really everyone said the same thing about Bump is that he was honest and fair and talked to them like adults. And so Bo was always honest and fair. I don't think guys would say, although they thought he could be unfair at times, to push them, but he was always honest. But Bo was a yeller, right? He was a screamer. He talked very differently to these guys. Now he treated them, I think, like men and had great expectations, but Bump rarely raised his voice, according to these guys, right? He was just a very different coach in that way. Billy Taylor told a story about how Bump really rarely swore, really cussed, and how Woody Hayes came to Billy's from Ohio. Billy's from Bo's hometown, Barberton, Ohio.
Yeah.
And how Woody came to recruit him and said, damn and hell. And he said, my mom looked at me over her glasses and I knew it was over. I wasn't going to Ohio State, and what impressed his mom about Bump is that Bump came in and was a gentleman and, asked about her and really seemed to care about Billy, which all these players said is true about Bump and all the great coaches do, right? Bo did as well. Lloyd Carr's a favorite of mine from when I was there because I was not a star by any stretch of the imagination. I was a Thursday All-American at best, right? I got in the game when we were in no danger of losing, but Lloyd treated me, you know, saw what I was doing on scout team and saw what I was, saw how hard I tried, right? I did the
Yeah.
best I could, and he treated me like that. So these coaches are throughout Michigan's history, but Bump was one of the guys who, treated them like adults and with respect and dignity and was a good coach, like you said.
Yeah.
There's a great scene in the book between Canham and Bump that I really love. I'm not going to give it away, but it says a lot about Bump. And then Bump went on to have an incredible career as the athletic director at Iowa.
Yeah.
Yeah. So certainly a great athletic man, a great football man. And everyone just, had great things to say about him. And by the way, as they all said, the cupboard wasn't bare when Bo got there.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, yep.
Absolutely. Something to be said for that for sure. Okay, so moving on to Brent Sparling.
Yeah.
And I I gotta tell you, I'm like waiting by the waiting by the computer or my phone for the next episode every week, because that dude is something else.
Yeah. He's the foremost investigative journalist in the world of football.
He is he is the
No one really can stand with him, next to him, around him in terms of knowledge and insight, really, about
Yep,
the game of football.
that is true.
Yeah.
And the fact that he owns the best piece of equipment,
Yes.
the Schembechler 2000.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, I don't
Look,
even know how really to describe that thing, but it seems to uncover a lot of information and data.
it's
That
connected
most
to the football gods. The
Yes,
Schembechler 2000 is connected to the universe of the football gods, which is real, by the way.
yeah, yeah,
And the two of them figure a lot of stuff out. You and Chris Howard, who are the founders of Hale. You guys have just been amazing, man. Because when we first talked about it, you were like, I was like, I'd love to do something. You said, great, we'd love to have you do something. What are you thinking? I said, I got this character, a little out there though. This is not going to be like hey, here's the highlights of the last game and here's the analysis of the upcoming game. And you guys have just been fantastic at going, whatever you want to do, go for it. It's been a dream.
I love it,
Yeah.
and I love being able to respond with kind of the community that we're building around Hale Media, because people will come in and make comments, and we try to troll the opposing fan
Yes.
bases, and every now and then they'll come in and make a comment. I love clapping back on them. Is
Well,
the
you've been
action
right
guy.
in there, man. You got the tone right away. Your responses, I'm like, that's perfect. That's hilarious. Yeah.
I love it. I love being able to engage on behalf of Brent. It's a lot of fun.
Yes.
It's a lot of
Yeah.
fun.
Well, he's busy. He's down in his bunker.
He is. He's very busy. He's very busy. That's true. So what do we think is next for Brent, or don't we know? Does Brent even
Well,
know?
I
He
mean,
probably
Maryland's
doesn't.
coming up. He's going to tape the Maryland episode tomorrow. And then, of course, we have Ohio State after that. He's already kind of figured out Maryland and what's going on there. And he's already looking into Ohio State and trying to understand exactly what might be lurking underneath behind the scenes. I mean, look, episode 1, we found out that New Mexico was using aliens to play football.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right? We found out that the Sooner Boomer wagon in Oklahoma had some very shady stuff going on inside that. So he's really, at the front of the pack in terms of discovering things. So he's trying to dig up, find out exactly what's going on with Ohio State, the Buckeyes. And then as we move on, man, the sky's the limit. I think he wants to do some interviews, talk to some people. Maybe we get some of these Michigan guys on, get Bryce or Sharon or I think he'd love Biff. I think that would be a really fun guy to talk to.
I
So,
think he's made his love for Biff very clear. Yeah, we got to make some of that happen for sure.
yeah,
For sure. Awesome.
it'd be good.
Yeah. Well, hey, man, I've I've enjoyed this conversation as I knew I would.
Thank you, Doug.
Yeah, and once again, Hail. Those Who Stayed is the name of the book. Just plug it however you need to, man. Where can we get it? How's it all shaping up?
Well, yeah, the ebook is up for pre-order right now. It's going to go on sale the 24th, 25th, I believe. And then the print book is going to be a paperback. You can order that as well. You can't pre-order that. Amazon doesn't let you, but that should be up on the 25th. We're having a little bit of back and forth with Amazon right now, but if not, it'll be up shortly after that. So the ebook's there for people who want the ebook. That's going to be up on the 25th, and then the paperback should be right there with it. If not, shortly after that. Like you said, it's a fun, entertaining read, and the idea was for the generations like us, the older generations maybe who know that it's a different take on it, like you enjoy, but it was also written with, I'm going to give this to my nephews. You know what I mean? For younger, my son who's 14, I want him to read this because of the messages of leadership and grit and loyalty and teamwork, and also just the Michigan football lore, right? It's really written for all ages to give the older generation something to read and have fun with, and to pull that past forward for the younger generations to understand what Michigan football is all about. So that's when it's going to be out. And I'm excited, and remember that everything, that I'm definitely a portion of the proceeds is going to FAM, and that's extremely important to me, and I know to you as well.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, well, great stuff, man. Thanks again. We'll be looking forward to seeing that in print. We're going to make sure everybody goes out and gets a copy for themselves. All right, well, hey, thanks again, Brian. Go Blue,
All right.
man.
Go Blue, Doug. See you, bud.
If you like this kind of content, please like, share, follow, and subscribe. And as always, go Blue.